Okay, cool. Ready?
Yep.
Right, I'll give George a clap. Okay, so another episode of Resting Pitch Face. Today, I'm joined by Alex Grace, who's the CEO of Banana Moon Clothing and a fellow B Corp. So we're on the 27th of March at the time of recording, which is coming to the end of B Corp Month. And I think from our perspective, obviously, it's nice to be joined by a fellow B Corp member. But I think with it being B Corp Month, the conversation in the press at the moment and the for and against and the benefits and the potential downfalls of the process and being certified, of being in the spotlight. So hopefully we'll get into it and get your perspective of what that means and what it looks like from running a B Corp. So just a quick intro, I guess, of your process would be a good starting point. What your experience was like going through the process, what the value that you've gained from it, and also maintaining it. Because I think a lot of people think, right, you've got your status, now you're certified, that's that, see you later. But I think people lose the fact that it's an ongoing thing, especially if you're trying to constantly improve. It's not like industry awards where you pay to play. It's actually quite a drawn out, long commitment to get to that point. So it'd be good to get your perspective of that journey and what it's sort of meant from certification.
Yeah. From my perspective, it goes right back to first hearing about B Corp. It must have been about sort of 2015. And I think that's when B Lab UK started.
Yeah.
And I was like, this looks amazing. This is us. This feels right. And didn't really give it much thought, really. It felt right to have that as a goal, an ultimate goal to attain to. And years passed, we were implementing new things and growing and just doing the things that we thought right. It wasn't along the lines of the sort of B Corp guidelines or anything like that. And then it got to COVID and I'd already got it in the business plan. So it was in the business plan about 2019, we're going to go for B Corp. COVID came, we shut down, and I was like, this is the perfect opportunity to do it. So it was in a lockdown, one of the lockdown periods where I was like, let's just get started. I've got nothing else to do. I just jumped into the assessment, had no preconceptions about what that was going to look like. And as I said, I hadn't even really done my research. B Corp has always been this dream, this goal, but I hadn't particularly done my research about the assessment as such. I just thought, with me, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to get started. I'm just going to fly straight in. And that's what I did. And I started to have a look. And that B impact assessment, the BIA, was so interesting. The way that they do it, the way that you answer those questions, and you can add multiple answers to one particular question that scores points. And as I was doing it, I was like, hang on, we're scoring some points here. Like, this is positive. And so it was this mixture of, wow, this is a big task, with, I'm really excited by this. And I think when we got sort of 2 or 3 days in to the initial questionnaire, it was like, I said to the team, I think we could be a certified B Corp here. So really exciting process for that. It was almost like a switch moment. I'd not pre-planned it. It was just like, actually, we can be one.
Yeah, I think that's similar process to what we had. We did the pre-assessment and we scored pretty much at the level of what you need to qualify.
Yeah.
But from our perspective, as a value-led business and a people-led business, we found it really good validation for how we'd been operating, and it almost just gave us a really clear stamp of approval for everything that we'd kind of been doing to that point, which is really good.
Yeah absolutely. It's that feeling of we're doing all the right things across all of these different areas, and feeling like that that's actually achievable to achieve this standard that you and I have been thinking about for so long, we're just naturally doing those things. It's a nice thing to feel like those standards are being met by our businesses, because sometimes you think, actually, this process is probably best suited to these really large companies with lots of resource, lots of investment, but that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. How did the team react when you started talking about it and started saying, look, we're going to push for this?
In all honesty, I don't think the team fully understood it.
Yep.
And I think because it was my dream.
Yep.
And of course, they're gonna back it. They're gonna say, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, it's a great idea, Alex. But they were always on board from that perspective, but didn't really understand it. And it was really interesting actually, because we tried to do all the comms beforehand to really share it with people. And we've got a really wide set of different skills. So we're not just office based, we're obviously a manufacturer, so we've got a production set as well.
Yep.
So lots of a really diverse workforce, and to communicate that in the right way to every person so that they understood why it was important to the business, I found really challenging.
Yep.
So we tried lots of different things around with different documents, sharing videos. And I think the final bit was, I do fairly regularly sort of like State of the Nation talks in front of everyone. So it would be sort of every quarter. And the bit that really clicked, I saw people's eyes light up when the sort of two main things were saying, here are some of the companies and some of the brands that that you already are buying from that are B Corp certified. And they're like, wow, they are. Mm-hmm. And to then go, at the point that we did it, there are less than 1,000 UK certified B Corps.
Yep.
And we are very likely to be one of the first 1,000 in the UK. And I think that just set this feeling of, geez, this is a big deal for us.
Yeah, it was the same for us. I mean, the agency sector seems to have accelerated in terms of the amount of B Corps that have now cropped up. But at the time when we got our certification, and certainly at the time when we started the process, there was slim pickings in terms of agencies that were certified. So it became for us, how can we get the best score possible for the sector?
Yeah.
And it was fairly, I mean, obviously it took us the best part of 2 years to get it done and get it over the line, but it was fairly straightforward for us in terms of hitting the benchmarks that we wanted to. I think the difficult work starts from certification and keeping it front of mind and keeping the team engaged and keeping the business on track for improving that score.
What do you do with that then, Lee? How do you, so now you and I, as our businesses both have this certification, what's your process for that sort of continual improvement in there?
Well, when we did the certification, we set up a committee. So throughout the process, we had team members from each department that were involved but weren't leading the process. And then beyond that, what we've tried to do is keep it front of mind and educate the team internally, but also we're now starting to publicly produce content and try and be known for it. And I think that education piece, whilst it takes time, is important because it changes everybody's line of thinking. And obviously Polly has been huge in the whole process, the certification and beyond. And she does a really good job of making sure that it stays in people's heads and people kind of understand why we're doing it and why we're trying to uphold it. And it's interesting when there's public negativity around the process or the certification and how valid it is. But I always go back to like pre-B Corp and pre the movement. If you've set your standards and your values from the outset, then it's just a badge of honor for me. It's business for good. And to be fair, it's important, but we'd still probably operate in exactly the same way without it. It's a line in the sand and a bit of a flag, isn't it? For
it's really interesting because so I'm not sure how many people listening will be aware of like the ISO standards, the ISO 9001, the 14001 for environmental, and 9001 is equality. And I remember always someone telling me about the ISO standard, that it's what you do. We just document it as a process in a manual. So it fits you don't change your business to fit it. It fits around your business and what you already do. And when you're audited on it every year, for people to come in and say, are you fitting the standard? They're basically checking that what you say you do and how you operate is how you actually do operate. And the team are all in line with that, so that no one's going rogue and doing all this different stuff. With the ISO bit, you could say, well, what if your process is flawed? Well, as part of the ISO, you have customer feedback. So you have customer feedback that tells you whether your service and product is of a high standard or not. And then you have a process that has to be acting on that feedback. So you're continuously improving. So even if that process is flawed or could be better, that has to improve through the feedback loop. And it's the same for me with the B Corporation. Exactly like you said there. We already work to this standard. This is us. This is how we see the world. This is how Alex, sees this world and the world of business. So when I answer these questions for the impact assessment, it's just what we do. So let's just carry on doing that. But I think you've got a great process there. It sounds like you've really been thinking about how to continue that. And I think just to add to that, from my perspective, Lee, we found the last few years incredibly challenging, as I'm sure you and every other business has as well. I'm not doubting that, but from as a UK manufacturer, a self-funded family business, we own everything that we have. We don't borrow anything, and the rolling with the punches of the last few years, it's really difficult with a small team to absolutely prioritize the continual improvement on B Corp. And because sometimes in some months it's about survival. And you've got to think commercially, you've got to think about your sales and marketing, you've got to think about your profit, because there isn't any purpose without that profit side of things. And I think one of the things that I'm most proud of in the last few years is, despite having to regularly jump on and be really agile and jump into that almost survival mode, that we've still managed to make progress. Admittedly, we probably could have made a lot more, and would have loved to have made loads more progress, but it's still always been right through our strategic business plan. It still sits as part of our overall vision. And we keep driving it forward despite all the challenges that we face. And I think for me, I'm not trying to big ourselves up too much, but that's encapsulates when a B Corp should be a B Corp, because they still keep moving forward even when they probably shouldn't, because it's actually there are other priorities, but it's still so important that from an ethical point of view, from a sustainability perspective, that we keep taking steps forward.
Have you ever found yourself in the position, obviously the last, 5 years, unfortunately, have been shit, haven't they? Let's be frank about it. Have you found yourself in a position where commercial decisions have caused conflict with the approach?
Yes and no. I think this again, I think this is the interesting part of what B Corp does, is it almost regulates and hold you accountable. Because you have it in the back of your mind. So when we might sit around like as a management team or even with shareholders on paper. So this is a good example, actually. So we weren't, we've been real living wage now and real living hours for 3 years. And at the time, commercially, it was an uplift to everything. From some of those base salaries and some of the national insurance contributions and everything like that. And on the face of it, it was the wrong thing to do. But it was absolutely the right thing to do. So we did it. And I think I think it makes you have the discussion.
Yeah.
And you throw out all the different options. We'd love to do this, but actually it's probably not a great time to do it. So some things have maybe been shelved, but other things you just keep pushing forward with. And I think that is a really difficult balance to strike, like you say, in the last few years. Have you found the same with that and making decisions based on that?
Yeah, we had the same thing through the living wage. We're living wage certified as well, so we've had exactly the same experience with that, and it's also built into the way that we work out progression and like salary increases and stuff. Over the last sort of 6 years, we've been doing a multi-step approach to like salaries. So we have obviously everybody's living wage or above, but then we have like a baseline. So trying to be really considerate to cost of living, trying to be really considerate to food prices, for example, and giving baseline increases in line with that, and then sitting promotions and things like that on top of it or outside of it. Yeah. And through difficult economic times, decisions like that as a business owner, it's like you've got to look beyond it, and you've got to have the confidence that you're going to be better for it. Yeah. And I think sometimes that's difficult. Yeah. But like you say, what it does is you've got this like little voice in the back of your mind, haven't you? And I think that's a good thing. And I think that's one of the underrated benefits of being held accountable for maintaining that operating model. Yeah. So yeah, I can totally relate to that one.
We had similar we when it was going through the cost of living crisis, and it was coming to the winter, and the fuel was becoming really expensive. Winter period is usually our lower season. You know, we have seasonal peaks, and we decided as a business that we should give a fuel bill contribution. So we decided to do that for the team. In reality, it was a stupid decision from a financial perspective.
From the bottom line.
Yeah, it was a silly thing to do because it made profitability in those months even harder. Because times, you know, even if it was a decent amount that we gave, but times that out by all of your employees, it's a lot of money on top of your ever increasing wage bill as well. So yeah, we did that for about 3 years during that winter period and those winter periods. And again, it's just another example of going, no, we're committed to this. This is how we see the world, and we are more invested in the long-term game, the long-term success of Banana Moon. And to do that, what we need is these brilliant people to be on board, to be fully invested and wanting to come with us all the way. And my view on that has always been to lead with those touches of kindness, or those touches of things that are slightly unique or different to most organizations, because it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And what I find with that, and this isn't the reason for doing it, but what I find with that is that just comes back tenfold from the team, because they just can't believe some of the things that you do and put in place, you know, as a business that cares. And they're so bought in and loyal and passionate about what we do. It's an absolute joy to have them in the business. And that respect and that camaraderie just builds and builds. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like a default way of treating people. Yeah. But then when there's an ask, you don't have to ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah. That's how I would describe it. But yeah, I agree with that. That's just how we go as well. We always have done.
Yeah. I get the sense of that. You know, whenever I have an interaction with the team here, like you get the sense that it's the B Corp businesses, and this isn't to say that other businesses don't have this, because that aren't B Corp certified. Of course, some wonderful businesses out there.
Yeah, totally.
There's you get a certain feel and a certain type of engagement I find from B corporations. You just know what you're going to get.
Yeah, and I think that ties into what I was going to lead on to now with customers. Like, what we found in certain situations is, especially when it's B Corp to B Corp, there's immediate barriers that come down.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've had the same thing, like when your customers approach you knowing about your status, that increases the chances that you're going to get business.
Yeah.
And I think that's an underrated and less discussed commercial benefit to B Corp.
Yeah.
We've certainly seen it. We've been in pitch situations where we've been the only B Corp on the other side of the table, and it's gone in our favour. So,
Brilliant.
what have you seen the same thing in terms of people approaching you? I guess with your manufacturing side, you've got the sustainability element and things like that. Has that become more of a conversation?
It has. Do you know what? I think it's really important, to be honest, and this might just be our experience of this, but I don't think B Corp certification is necessarily life-changing from a commercial or financial perspective. So I think if those people are on the outside of it looking in going, I really need to get this because actually look what might happen, I don't think that's necessarily the case, that it suddenly transforms your business and it absolutely changes. But exactly what you said there, Lee, I think for acquiring new customers, when you're speaking to them, particularly if they're already B Corp certified, we talk about it being a badge, but a badge in a good way, because what it does is it stops the first hour and a half of 2 hours of conversations about, tell me a bit about your business then, and how do you operate, and tell me a little bit about your sustainability and what are your people like. And you don't have to go through all that stuff because you both know instantly what it took there or thereabouts to achieve it.
Yeah.
And so you can just drop all that stuff and go, right, I pretty much know what I'm going to get from you as a CEO, you as my account manager, you as the different team members, and your offering is going to be attentive, it's going to be engaged, you're going to want to make sure that I'm happy, it's going to be fair, it's going to be honest, and you're also going to have a positive impact on the world around you. So let's talk about the work that we can do, because I already feel like I kind of get who you are.
Yep.
And I love that. That's that's one of the best things about it. It just takes away that initial conversation about it.
Yeah, I think it's like you're not a dick. Is how I would describe it.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, that you, like you say, you don't have to go through that small talk to figure it out. You've got an alignment. You've immediately got an alignment. And I think it's just a massive signal, isn't it, that you give a shit about what you do.
Yeah.
And that's going to come through with the service that you're delivering or the product that you're buying and I think that a lot of people take comfort in that from the get-go.
I think non-B Corps as well. I think, you know, totally. they come through and they might not have it themselves, but if they know about it and understand what it is, they again get a good feel for who you are. And that is, like you said there in that pitch process where it's just you, they've got a good feel about the kind of business that you are and the other things that you'll be doing and the impact that you're having on not only the team, but the environment and the community around you. It's positive.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses are driven now, rightly or wrongly. Some of it's because they feel they have to, let's be honest. But a lot of businesses, for the right reasons, are driven to work with suppliers that are more ethically conscious and more morally conscious than ever before.
Yeah, I think that's a massive movement. I don't think that that's ever going to decline. I think it's just going to continue to grow. I think it's a good thing. You've got to look at it for what it is and think that the world is moving. Like the commoditization of information makes it so that people are so much more informed about what they're doing, what they're buying, what they're eating, what they're reading, everything. Yeah. So it's almost becoming like a default thing to think about. And I think in maybe another 5-10 years, it won't even be a thought process. It'll be like, if it's not, then I don't want to be involved with it.
Do you know, I had this is commercial hat on.
Yep.
This was retrospectively actually from the desire to be a B Corp that I've sort of really thought about this, because I saw the B Corp and it was like that's something that really appeals to me. It's a bit of a dream, is that. And so I was I was managing director of Banana Moon at about 26 years old, quite young. I remember thinking, as we were sort of on that path to developing a culture, looking after the team and thinking about how we operate from a sustainability perspective, the way that I think, the way that I believe business should be is the same as you, Lee, right? So we have a very similar outlook on that. And when I was in my role, there was still a lot of people of, say, the previous generation, and that's not to say they didn't care, but it was just a different generation of the decision makers. So the managers, the directors of businesses thought a particular way.
Yep.
But I knew that I thought differently. And I think from a commercial perspective, I was thinking, well, if I think like this, and I know the people of my generation think like this, then soon they will be, like me, the decision makers. They will be the managers, the directors, the CEOs of these businesses across the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So actually what I'm doing is I'm preserving the long-term security of this business because I'm making it more commercially attractive right now for the future decision makers. And that was a key part as well from a commercial side of why I believe B Corp was such a fantastic thing to do.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that's a great way of summarizing what it is and what it means, because you can't look at it as a short term. It's like I said at the start, you don't go to certification, get your badge, and then that's it. It's like, right, this is a future. This is 10 years. This is 15 years, 20 years into the future. And you've got to understand that going into it, I think.
Our job is to create my job in particular, from a family business perspective, we've been around over 30 years. I'm a second generation. Now I believe, we're a small business, but I believe we positively impact the lives of those around us. And people might say, oh, I don't think you do, but I think we do. I think it's with the team. I think it's with our suppliers and the people we work with and our partners. I think it's with our customers and the service that we deliver. And I think it's with the sustainable elements that we can offer as a business. And I think my job is to make sure that this business continues on and lives on for the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years, because not only have we got a fantastic team that we need to look after and make sure that they're securely employed for the future, but that our positive impact on everyone around us continues, because I think we add more to the world than the negative impact of what we add to the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's my key bit about it, is making sure that that legacy continues, however it looks in the future, that we're still here and still secure. And that means not making silly, knee-jerk decisions, things that put us at risk, because there's a far greater thing to think about. And in particular, my number one focus is the security of that team and their jobs and their livelihoods. And that is really, really important to me. And I have that in my mind all the time. And I think, again, to bring it in, that whole essence of B Corp enforces that.
In terms of you, turning the lens on you personally, like you were MD at 26, long before B Corp became a popular thing.
Yeah.
Has B Corp altered your leadership style, or has it developed it?
I don't think it's altered it. It's the same. I see the world the same, because I feel very aligned with the concept of it. But there's a couple of bits that have probably become more clear to me. And I think one of those is pride, the importance of pride for people in an organization. And personally, for me, proud of being who we are, Banana Moon, but proud of being a certified B Corp. But when we do employee engagement surveys, the number one metric that comes back of how people feel about the business, and we're talking 95%, every time, is pride. Proud to be at Banana Moon, proud to be part of it. And that's more powerful than anything. And that's why we have such a cracking team that have been with us for a long time. We've got loads of experience. So I think understanding the value of that pride to people more so than things like salary or, financial incentives and things like that. Obviously it's important, but how important that is. And I think the other thing that's really changed for my leadership, and it's stuff that we've been doing bits of, but I didn't realize it before. We were just doing it. But my goal is particularly now I have a focus of wanting to improve people's lives because of working at Banana Moon. So I want their lives to be better. And again, people listening might think, well, that's not possible. That sounds a bit cheesy. It's the truth. So in 15, 20, 25 years time, when people look back at the time at Banana Moon, I want them to go, my life is better for working there. It was improved from working there because I felt so happy there. I didn't go home on a night and curse about it all night to my partner and say, God, I don't want to go back there tomorrow. And I think part of that is not just thinking about people's careers. So we think about the training that they need for the job. We think about the appraisal. We think about how we can make them better performing employees. But I want to look wider at people's lives. So, for example, would be, this is a fact, but it's a generalization that our production team typically lack some computer literacy skills. So as a digital business that we are, if we're a manufacturer, but we're digital, sometimes they have to send emails. Sometimes they have to work Excel spreadsheets. That sounds really basic, doesn't it, to people who use them all the time? It's not. And they're scared of it.
Yep.
And they don't want to own up to the fact that they're scared of it. So we put on computer literacy courses in Banana Moon via college for those production staff that felt they particularly needed it. Now, for me, the impact of that, not only does it make them better at their job, but little things like, I'd never get an online banking app. They now will.
Yep.
Because they feel more comfortable in doing it. And in my belief, that having an online banking app makes it banking a hell of a lot easier to run your financial. And that's just a small point. Even having people in the team that English is a foreign language, we put on English lessons for those people. And it's thinking, it doesn't matter whether they're here for the next year and then they disappear. It doesn't matter. Yeah. They have that skill now for life. Mental health first aid training, even just leadership training. It doesn't have to just be for Banana Moon. It's for their career, it's for their life.
Yep. I can wholeheartedly relate to that. I think it's genuinely giving a shit.
Yeah.
Which is something I've said to the team. I think I probably in the early days, being a little bit younger and a little bit punchier, I think I've even said, you won't find a person who gives more of a shit about you than I will that's leading a business. And I think, again, from a personal level, it's when you find someone that's got that mindset, people completely disconnect the emotional drain that is, that level of detail, that level of support, that level of care and attention. Because last 5 years, culture has become popular, hasn't it? It's become a buzzword. Yep. People have a lack of connection to it and a lack of understanding about what it means. But I think leaders in positions like you and I that genuinely drill down on a personal level and give a shit about that person, not only when they're in the business, when they go home.
Yes.
It's missed. So when you find someone like that, I'd like to think that staff, people, anyone is going to gravitate towards it and cling on to it.
Yeah.
And I think, again, B Corp allows you to have the platform to give people that information, but also let them discover that that's genuine.
Yeah, I think it's really easy, as you say, to be, a lot of businesses. So when we first particularly started working on our culture, there was a lot of reasons behind that as to why we did that. It's quite a long story. And a lot of businesses now are very strong on culture, you know, particularly, you know, investing a lot in it. And that's great. And that's really, really improved. My gut feel on it is it's still about the performance of that individual in the workplace. And it's not about their life and that sort of holistic approach to life. I mean, let's face it, if we're talking about performance of someone at work, if they're really, really stressed out, or if they're just hating the job, or they're finding something particularly difficult and they're scared to be able to speak to a manager about it because they don't listen or they're dismissive of it, they're not coming in the next day to be a high performing individual for your team anyway, are they? So, but you're right. I think
there's a disconnect there, though, for me. Like, you see it all the time, don't you? Giving a shit about people outside of work is giving a shit about them when they're in work.
Yeah.
If someone's not feeling it, or they're going through something outside of work and they haven't even got the confidence to let management or that that's in play, then you've lost the game for me.
Yeah.
You don't want a distracted, disconnected team member.
No.
You want an engaged, passionate employee.
Yeah.
And I think that comes. And look, there are times everybody's life has problems. Yeah. Things ebb and flow. People are going to go through stuff outside of work. But I think the support system that you put in place to facilitate that from a flexibility standpoint, from a support standpoint, is key to a genuine culture, because people aren't going to align with your values if you don't align with treating them like people.
No. And that's it. And, you know, back to B Corp, it's a key part of the whole essence of it. When you go through that B impact assessment, one of the main things they want to know is, do you get regular feedback from your team? Are you hearing from them?
Yep.
You know, do you check in on them? Because that is the opportunity when you're creating those relationships, or even that anonymized ability to submit something on a survey, to at least get some information back, to get a feeling of where people are at. And that's what it's trying to instill. It's trying to get you to talk to them without repercussion.
Yeah.
There's no repercussion. You tell me. I'd rather you be honest and tell me that there's something about either my approach or the business's approach that you're not comfortable with. I can at least deal with that. Storing it up because you're too scared to say something for fear of maybe disciplinary, or even worst case, losing your job. That just can't happen. And again, I think those are the little bits, if you look in between it, that B Corp is trying to pull out of you when you're doing your impact assessments. Do you have this sort of infrastructure in place to speak to your team, to communicate with them, to actually understand what's going on?
Yeah. No, you're right there. Yeah. It is interesting when you zoom out. I've never really had a deep discussion about the process or the intricacies of what's come out of it, and like the flywheels that are involved in actually going through it and keeping it going. It is really interesting.
What did you find with that sort of way of multiple choicing through questions through the assessment, and that sort of, it's almost that suggestive, if you had this in place, you would score this. How did you find that from because you could look at it from a perspective of going, oh, it's point scoring. Forget the point scoring. It's actually inspiring you potentially to look at new things. Did you take quite a lot on board from the process and go, that's a new idea?
Yeah, and I think committing to improving the score meant that going through the assessment, where we didn't feel like we were 100% on for those multiple choices, we would take the increment and be like, right, we need to improve this, but we're not going to be able to do it for this. We're going to put it in workflow for moving forward. And then when we get reassessed, or when we do as annual, we'll look at it. And if we've improved, we've improved. But I always struggle with multiple choice generally. I feel like it lacks the ability to give your explanation and your circumstances. And I think it's so subjective, isn't it? And then you've got different businesses that operate different models. So I know they've got to standardize it to a certain degree to be able to assess, but I always struggle with multiple choice in general. I think
that's where, for me, it's really, you know, again, there's a lot of ways to criticize the approach of how people get certified, but I think that's the bit for me, the bit that comes after that initial assessment, is really like the blood and guts of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get your assigned auditor and it's like, okay, so you've answered this stuff. Let's see your evidence then.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, cool. You know, here it is. And you know, thankfully, you know, I was thinking about this on the way in. I was thinking about it. And thankfully, we answered everything honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I didn't know what the next step looked like.
Yep.
And the next step was actually send your evidence then. You know,
well,
and that was quite, and I like that.
That was the same with us. We were almost like, it was like going to court, wasn't it? When we had that first assessment with the person that was on our account.
Yeah.
But she was so lovely.
Yes.
And it was so refreshing.
It was a pleasure, wasn't it?
Coming off the back of it, knowing that we went into it exactly the same way as you, like honesty first and foremost. Yeah. It just made it easier.
Yeah.
And she was great. Yeah. And then I think we had maybe 2 or 3 follow-ups, something like that. And it just got easier and easier and easier. And then once you know how to communicate and what they're looking for, it gets easier and easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And I think that's the great thing, that just for those who haven't experienced the assessment before that are maybe listening to this, just that maybe that scoring system, like you say there, that multiple choice can seem a little bit, that's a bit strange, but you actually speak to a real person, you actually give proper evidence, and that's the real tricky bit, but also the real bit about the certification, I think.
Yeah. Going to the other end of the spectrum,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to pull on recent news. So obviously smaller end of the scale, businesses like us, sub 50, 100 people. I think the capability of a business to be agile enough to respond, make changes, maintain B Corp at that level is obviously going to be easier than a big corp. But Unilever have been in the news, who I didn't know were B Corp. I'm not going to lie. Like when I was reading the news about, did you see the Ben & Jerry's thing?
Yes.
Yeah, about the CEO getting sacked.
Yes.
I mean, that blew my mind just in general, but it also brought my attention to the fact that Unilever is B Corp, which again, I was like, what? How? What do you think at that scale versus down at the smaller business end, what do you think the difference in complexity is and approach? And also at a corporate scale, do you think that the meaning behind it is as valid as it is for a smaller sub 100 person business?
See, I think about this because I think I'm pretty certain like Danone, a B Corp as well. And you know, you buy a bottle of water like an Evian or a Volvic, they're B Corp.
Yep.
And I'm like, a white company, they've just become B Corp. And I'm like, how do they implement that? How do they? So all the stuff that we do, that must be a really significant undertaking, given the sheer amount of people that are involved in that business, to get that communication across, to talk about what the benefits are, and to also live by those every day. I think from a corporate perspective, it's really hard to comment, isn't it, as a smaller business, but I find it hard to believe that they can be as agile or they can be as attentive to the standards of B Corp.
Yep.
As we would be, because to an extent, Lee, when you or I want to do something, we're doing it, aren't we?
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Much, yeah.
And whereas for a business like that, where it's full of structure, full of processes, full of all the lines of control that it has to go to, I cannot imagine how hard that must be. But what that does give me is it gives me a sense of, it gives me a good feeling that actually to have gone through that certification process, despite all of that they were up against, that is a serious achievement.
It is. It is. And I know that it's assessed through B Corp, but I just find it completely unrelatable. It just doesn't make sense for my understanding of it. No, really, at all.
I can't even imagine it.
It's just crazy to me because I know how involved it was.
Yeah.
I mean, the infrastructure, the resource, the time. I just don't get it, and that's where it becomes a grey area for me, because a Unilever, when we said at the start, like, it's not badge of honor, it's validation.
Yeah,
feels like badge of honor for someone like a Unilever. Like, they've got it so that they can say it, so that then they can do things that they can use that to gloss over.
Yeah, I get you. I think
maybe that's just me being super skeptical.
I think so. It's so difficult because I'm probably a bit too much this way, but I always take things on that face value of going, they must really care. And they've been audited. We know what that process is like. Times that out by like 1,000. They've been audited and they've been certified B Corps for significant amounts of time. So taking it on face value and going, these guys must be doing some seriously good stuff. But you're right. Did it start off going, you know what, we get a bit of a foot up here if we get this?
Oh, totally.
I just don't know how you can fudge it.
I think for me, like, you look at the movement of like ESG, where you're like, that would make it easier for them to get the equality sorted and and I'm like, I don't know. I'm just skeptical, I think.
Yeah.
It's corporations within that movement doesn't feel natural. And I don't know whether it's because if you look at a Unilever, a public company, they do shareholder announcements, papers, reports. I haven't seen a Unilever impact assessment.
No.
And I'm sure they have got one, but there's not the same emphasis placed as there is.
You'd think, to be fully transparent, that, and this might be happening, it might just be that we just don't get to see it, we're busy running our businesses as well, but that B Corp would be particularly parading out those ones, wouldn't you?
I would think so, yeah. I mean, the amount of investment they would have taken to reach that status, and they must have a significant amount of people internally that are tasked with getting that sorted and maintaining it.
Yeah.
So why is that not the talking point? I don't know.
What did you think about? I think there are a couple reasonably high profile ones that have decided against recertifying. Yeah. Did you see that?
Yeah.
What do you think to that?
I think it sort of follows on from the Unilever conversation. When people that like bleed for it are seeing that, it's easy to become disenchanted with the process and the way that it's validated. And it's a challenge for B Corp, I'm sure, that they come up against. Like, they've got to get buy-in. And as soon as you start losing buy-in, you lose people's support. Yeah. And I think businesses that operated in a B Corp way before becoming certified might be the people that fall out of love with it and its value diminishes, but carry on operating in the right way.
I think that's the message from those ones, isn't it? Those particular organizations has been like, it doesn't change the way we are.
Yeah.
We're just not taking up the certification. And in fact, actually, I think on a couple of those, it wasn't, you could say, oh, it's about saving money. It's not. I think it was publicly stated that they were donating that certification, recertification fee to charity as well.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's really easy for me to speak on behalf of others. I don't know what was going through, but there's always that feeling of that early adopters as well. And it does taint it a little bit. You know, so like for us, we weren't early, but we were one of the first 1,000. I think it's more than 2,000 in the UK now. Still quite a small number. But there's often that, isn't it? And I think with anything in life, you fall in love with something, do it for a few years, and sometimes for whatever reason, you go off in a different direction. But yeah, it was interesting how publicly stated that became, and I think I get the sense there are quite a lot of people were very skeptical about it. Yeah.
I think, do you know what I think would combat that? B Corp doubling down on a Unilever and their public facing content, their public facing opinion of it. I think if Unilever were in collaboration with B Corp were made to be super transparent about the process, it might lower people's skepticism about the meaning of it, because I guarantee the time investment to get it will have been just unimaginable. So I think there's probably a disconnect between, like we were saying, under 100 people and your tens of thousands of people, businesses that are B Corp. And I don't know, in my mind, that the bridge for that is over-indexing on transparency content, showing the effort. Because I think if you lose that, it loses its validity for the people that have been at the other end of the scale, that have bled to get it and maintain it. And I think that's where it's coming from with the people that are just not choosing to renew. But I think you've also got to think, like, when you scale something, if it's a movement or whatever, you're going to get people along the way that are going to dismiss it or fall out of love with it or change the mind. Yeah. And that's just going to happen, isn't it?
I mean, it's not that it's my intention to do this, but our recertification is due this year. And 2025, for a lot of reasons, is shaping up to be a tricky one. To put it mildly. So it's not a wonderful time to be looking at doing the whole recertification process, but you do, I'm not going to lie, you do go through that thought of going, am I best focusing on the business and the survival, the commercial success of the business this year and maybe not doing this? And I think, well, no, because for me, going right back to the start of our conversation today, this was a dream for me. How does little old Banana Moon ever become one of those? We did. So I'm not going to give it up. We're going to carry on. We're going to find the time because it matters.
Yeah. That's the key.
Yeah. We make the time.
And that's the right kind of people that should be in the spotlight with it, because that message is the right message. And I think it could even be, going back to Unilever, it could be that they have a representative that carries that mindset publicly. They have a representative that gives the effort and gives the opinions and gives the right message. And then that gap becomes smaller and smaller between a 100-person business and a tens of thousands person business. Yeah. But easier said than done in some circumstances, I think.
It is. It is with a large corporation.
Yeah. I've got some quick fire questions for you.
Go for it.
Now, I'm shit at these and I'm really bad at giving like concise answers. So feel free to just respond however you choose.
Okay.
But, what's the one thing about the B Corp certification that people don't realise?
It's not just a sustainability badge. I think everyone thinks when I say, "Oh, you're B Corp, you must be really great on sustainability." Well, yeah, we try really hard. There's a lot of wonderful initiatives that we've got, but actually, our impact is across a lot of wider categories, which is what the whole impact assessment is made up of. And I think that's the bit that people just don't understand. They think it's all about green.
Yep, I agree with that. There's so much more. I think that one of the main sections for us was the, I can't remember the wording of the category, but it's how you treat your employees.
Yeah.
That was really deep for us because obviously we're a people business and we're a service-based business. Yeah. So that was huge. So the sustainability side and the green side was a really small section of our assessment.
Yeah.
The biggest myth about sustainable business.
know if it's the biggest myth. The first thing that comes to mind would be that it costs more to run one, or that it's not as profitable.
Yep.
And to make one example for that, I talked about pride earlier. If you've got a workforce that feels an immense amount of pride working in a business and feels really part of it, it's little things like you don't have that churn, and then therefore your retention's better, so you don't have to constantly replace. And if you pay recruitment fees, you don't have to pay for those, and you don't have to then pay out of company time for all the training of the new person, and then the impact of that new person as they train up, who absolutely are going to make mistakes, and they're going to have a knock-on impact to your service level.
Yep.
And that's just one example for me of where you save money. And the other thing on that point, on the people side of things, and there are quite a few examples I could give, but the people side of things would be, it makes it far more compelling as a business to come and join, because people want to join a purpose-led business that has ethics and morals and cares about the environment. That is a massive shift towards what people are looking for when they join a company. So actually, again, you perhaps don't have to spend the same amount of money on your recruitment and recruitment fees and all that stuff, because you're able to attract that talent more easily.
Good answer. One book or resource every business leader should read.
Can I have two?
Of course. Yeah.
So I think given the conversation is about B Corp, I would say, my pronunciation is going to be brilliant here, but Yvon Chouinard, who is the Patagonia founder. Let My People Go Surfing, not serving, surfing, is a brilliant book all about mindset, how the brand came about, his passions and his hobbies, and how he wove the business into his hobbies and passions, and the way he lived. Unbelievable. The other one, I don't know if this has become, sorry if it's become a bit like business cliche, but one that had the biggest impact for me years and years ago was Find Your Why by Simon Sinek.
Yep, classic. Yep, I think everybody should read that.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
And final one, is B Corp a game changer, or do you think it's overhyped?
So for me, it's a game changer. For me, it's the standard of how businesses should be. Obviously, I'm biased, but it's a standard. And the reason I feel it's a game changer rather than overhyped, I can only talk about my personal feeling on it in this sense, but it was, I've said before in our conversation, that this was a dream, that we could ever be a B Corporation. And I remember the day that our certification came through was one of the standout proudest moments in my working life. And I remember telling my mum and dad, I remember telling everyone as part of the business, and they were all absolutely chuffed to bits. And I love those special feelings. Simon Sinek would suppose they call it like the peaks and troughs, and the peaks, that's a peak for me. And I just think, who'd have ever thought, say, a little old Banana Moon working from home for sort of 10 years, we'd say 3 people, the house that I grew up in, would grow into a business with all these departments, with sustainable machinery, with digital processes, automation, a wonderful team, loyal followers of Banana Moon, and be able to achieve something like that B Corp certification, that all those years ago when I first heard about it, I was like, wow, that'd be a dream. And that for me is why it's a game changer.
I'm going to leave it there. Alex, thank you. Thank you for doing all the work that you do. I think you need more recognition for your approach, because I think the country would be a better place if there were more business leaders that operate with your mindset.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Lee.